Okay, so this is the Daf for Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. We're in Daf 6. So the Gemara answers, what is this comparison? And they were comparing different shades of white of a leprous mark. What is this comparison? Granted, it would all be well were it not for the difficulty with regard to the mark, the color of the lime plaster, the sanctuary walls, as the difficulty raised with regard to an egg membrane colored mark is not difficult. And even though the shade of an egg membrane is 2 stages below that of Sa'et, the merciful one states, and for a Sa'et and for a Sapachat, Leviticus 14:56, which indicates that a Sapachat is secondary to Sa'et and can combine with it, even though a Sapachat is of much lower degree of brightness than it. Rabbi Akiva holds that both the additional shades not explicitly mentioned in the Torah are derived from the word Sapachat, and so both of them can combine with Sa'et. But the difficulty raised with regard to a mark, the color of the lime plaster, the sanctuary walls, is indeed difficult. Rather, it is clear that the Mishnah is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara elaborates on Rabbi Akiva's opinion. And where have we learned that, according to Rabbi Akiva, the different shades should be ordered, this one above that one, and according to their degrees of brightness, and only 2 adjacent shades can combine together. If we say we learned it from that which is taught in the following Braita, it is difficult. The Braita teaches, Rabbi Yoshi said that Yehoshua, son of Rabbi Akiva, asked of Rabbi Akiva, for what reason did the sages say that the different shades of leprous marks are 2 types that are 4, and proceed to specify their names? Rabbi Akiva said to him, But if not that, what else could they say? Rabbi Yehoshua answered him, let them say that any mark of a degree of brightness from that of an egg membrane and above is richly impure. Rabbi Akiva said to him, they specified the 4 different shades in order to say that they combine with each other in that order, that is, each one with its adjacent shade. Rabbi Yehoshua said to him, if so, let them simply say any mark of a degree of brightness from that of an egg membrane and above is richly impure, and they combine with each other. Rabbi Akiva said to him, they specified their names in order to tell you any priest who is not an expert in distinguishing between them and identifying their names is not authorized to inspect the leprous marks and make a decision regarding them. The Gemara explains the difficulty. Rabbi Yehoshua suggested that according to Rabbi Akiva's opinion, it should be sufficient to say that any mark of a degree of brightness from that of an egg membrane and upward is impure. But he did not say that. It would be also necessary to add, and any mark of a degree of brightness from that of the lime plaster, the sanctuary walls and above is impure. So if Rabbi Akiva agrees with the categorization in the Mishnah, then it would be necessary to state separately each category of marks in a dual formulation in order to indicate that only shades that are categorized together can combine. The Gemara suggests, conclude from the fact that he did not say this to Rabbi Akiva, that Rabbi Yehoshua heard of Rabbi Akiva that he says all the different shades combined with Sa'et. Accordingly, both a snow-white beheret and a lime-colored mark will each combine with a Sa'et as they are adjacent to it when listed in order of their degrees of brightness. An egg membrane-colored mark will also combine with a Sa'et as it is derived from the word Sapachat, and the Torah indicates that a Sapachat is secondary to Sa'et. The Gemara rejects this proof, but perhaps Rabbi Akiva does hold that the only combinations possible are Sa'et and its secondary mark, that is an egg membrane-colored mark, and a Baharat and its secondary mark, so a lime-colored mark. And perhaps Rabbi Yehoshua in fact proposed that the sages should use a dual formulation, but the Braita cites only the first half of the suggestion. Rather, Rabbi Akiva's opinion can be inferred from that which Rabbi Hanina says, as Rabbi Hanina says the following is an analogy to illustrate the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Okay, to what is this matter comparable? It is comparable to 4 cups of milk, and 2 drops of blood fell into one of them, and 4 drops of blood fell into another one of them, and 8 drops of blood fell into another one, and 12 drops of blood fell into the last one. And some say that 16 drops fell in the last cup. But anyway, This is a suitable analogy as the milk in all of the cups still has a similar shade of white, but the cups can be ordered according to their degrees of brightness, as this one is above this one, and that one is above that one. Rabbi Hanina's analogy would appear to portray Rabbi Akiva's opinion in the same way it was cited earlier. The Gemara rejects this. The Torah states that a reddish-white affliction, Leviticus 13:42, is not just a flawless white one. Not just a flawless white one, renders a person ritually impure. Therefore, the Gemara suggests, say that you heard Rabbi Akiva express this opinion with regard to combining different shades of a mark that is mixed, fatuch, with red, which is the case most similar to the analogy offered by Rabbi Hanina, but with regard to different shades of flawless white. You heard Rabbi Akiva express this opinion. So have you heard Rabbi Akiva express this opinion? So if you would say that just as you heard Rabbi Akiva express his opinion with regard to a mark that is mixed with red, so too by logical expression, you have effectively heard Rabbi Akiva express his opinion with regard to different shades of flawless white. As what possible reason is there to differentiate between them? This is difficult, and this suggestion is problematic. As in the case of a mixed reddish-white mark itself, did you ever hear him express this opinion? But isn't it taught otherwise in the Mishnah, Nagaim 1:2, with regard to various shades of white that are mixed with red? Rabbi Akiva says the reddish variation of this one, that is a baharat, and that one, the lime-colored mark, are like wine diluted in water, except for the following distinction. The reddish variation of a baharat is still an intense white, like snow, albeit with a somewhat pinkish hue, but the reddish variation of lime is darker than it. So if it is so that Rabbi Akiva lists the different shades in descending order of their degree of brightness, then after mentioning the reddish variation of baharat, he should have next said the reddish variation of wool white mark is darker than it, but that the reddish variation of lime is darker than it. So they said in response to this, yes, it is indeed so that Rabbi Akiva continues by referring to the reddish variations of a wool white mark. And it is taught likewise in a Braita that Rabbi Natan says, referring to that Mishnah, it is not correct that Rabbi Akiva said the reddish variation of lime is darker than it. Rather, he said that the reddish variation of a wool white mark is darker than it. The Gemara considers the source from which the different shades of marks are derived. And from where do we derive that baharat is an intense white color? Abaye said the verse states, quote, and if it is a white baharat, Leviticus 13, verse 4, which indicates that it alone is a bright white, and there is no other as white as it. The sages taught in a Braita, the bright shade of a baharat makes it appear deeper than the surrounding skin, and so the verse states, and its appearance is deeper than the skin, Leviticus 13:25. This is like the appearance of an area illuminated by the sun, which appears deeper than the area in the shade. The darker shade of a saet makes it appear as though it is raised above the surrounding skin. This is indicated by the fact that the word saet means nothing other than raised. And so the verse states, upon all the high mountains and upon all the raised up hills. So raised up is Hanisayot. So Isaiah 2:14. The words Hanisayot and Sa'et share the same Hebrew root and both refer to something raised. So in the verse, for a Sa'et and for a Sapachat, Leviticus 14:56, the word Sapachat means nothing other than secondary, and so the verse states, and he will say, append me, Safacheni, append me, please, to one of the priestly classes to eat a piece of bread. 1 Samuel 2:36. This teaches that there is a leprous mark that is secondary and appended to a sa'et. This is a mark that is the color of an egg membrane. We found a source for a mark that is secondary to a sa'et. From where do we derive that there is also a mark that is secondary to a baharat? Rabbi Zerah said white, Leviticus 13:10, is stated with regard to a sa'et, and white, Leviticus 13, verse 4, is stated with regard to baharat. This indicates that just as the shade of white stated with regard to sa'et has a secondary mark, the mark that is the color of an egg membrane, so too the shade of white stated with regard to baharat has a secondary mark, the lime-colored mark. A different source for this was taught in a Braita. The verse, Leviticus 13, verse 2, placed the word sapachat, between Se'et and Baharat, to say to you, just as there is a shade that is secondary to a Se'et, so too there is a shade that is secondary to Baharat. The Mishnah in Negaim cited above states, a Se'et is like white wool. The Gemara asks, what is meant by white wool? Rav Bavli says that Rav Asi says, it is the color of clean wool from a lamb that is wrapped up, mechabnin, in a cover when it is 1 day old, in order to protect it from being sullied, so that the wool will be suitable for producing a fine wool garment. Okay, in continuation of this statement cited above, Rabbi Hanina says the following is an analogy to illustrate the opinion of the rabbis, the majority. The opinion expressed in the Mishnah in Negaim 1:1 that both a Baharat and a Se'ed have marks that are secondary to them. To what is this matter comparable? To two kings and to two governors, where with regard to their supremacy, the king of this governor is above the king of that governor, and the governor of this king is above the governor of that king. The two kings are analogous to Baharat and Se'ed, and their two governors are respectively a lime-colored mark and an egg membrane-colored mark. Accordingly, the order of supremacy is Baharat, Se'ed, lime-colored mark, egg, membrane-colored mark. Okay, so the Gemara mentions whether this is a suitable analogy for the opinion of the rabbis. But this analogy suggests that the shades are ordered, this one above this one and that one above that one, according to their degrees of brightness. That is Rabbi Akiva's opinion, not the opinion of the rabbis, the majority. Rather, a suitable analogy is where the king of this governor is above his own governor, the king of that governor is above his own governor. So too, each secondary mark is subordinate only to its primary mark. The Gemara presents a different analogy. Rav Ada bar Abba said, for example, a king and a chief officer, the vizier and the exilarch, each person in the list is more powerful than the subsequent one. The Gemara asks, but this analogy suggests that the shades are ordered, this one above that one, which is Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Rather, a suitable analogy is, for example, a king and a vizier and a chief officer in the exilarch. This list splits the four into two groups. Each group contains one person who is subordinate to the other. The Gemara presents a different analogy. Rava said the previous suggestion is not precise because all these positions, apart from the king, are subordinate to the king. A more precise analogy would be, for example, King Shapur, the king of Persia, with his subordinate, and the Roman emperor and his subordinate. Rav Papa said to Rava, which of them is greater, King Shapur or the Roman emperor? Rava said to him, does he eat in the forest, or do you live disconnected and unaware of events in the world at large? Go out and see whose coin circulates throughout the world, which is an indicator of the government's influence. As it is written with regard to the fourth empire described in Daniel's dream of the future powers of the world. Quote, it shall devour the whole earth and tread upon it and break it into pieces. Daniel 7:23. And Rabbi Yochanan says, this is the guilty empire of Rome, whose coin circulates throughout the entire world. The Gemara presents a different analogy. Ravina said, for example, a new white woolen garment and a frayed one, a new linen sheet and a frayed one. The Mishnah states, in cases of defiling the temple or its sacrificial foods I gotta say it again. The Mishnah, so 2a, states, in cases of defining the temple or its sacrificial foods in which one had awareness at the beginning and awareness at the end, but had a lapse of awareness in between while he actually transgressed, this person is liable to bring a sliding scale offering. The sages taught in a Braita, from where is it derived that the verse that describes the liability for a sliding scale offering, Leviticus 5:2-4, speaks of nothing other than defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods. While the verse mentions that a violation was committed due to a lapse of awareness of one's state of impurity, it does not mention which transgression was violated. The Gemara explains, and it is a logical inference since the Torah has explicitly prohibited and also prescribed punishment for an intentional defiling of something sacred, and has rendered one liable to bring an offering for the unwitting defiling of something sacred. It follows that just as when it was prohibited, also prescribed punishment for defiling of something sacred, it is prohibited and also prescribed punishment only for the intentional defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods. So too, when it rendered one liable to bring an offering for the defiling of something sacred, it rendered one liable to do so only for the unwitting defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods. The Gemara asks, but say instead that the obligation to bring a sliding scale offering is referring to a ritually impure person who partook of sacred portion of produce grown in Eretz Yisrael that is designated to be given to a priest or teruma, as the Torah also has explicitly prohibited and prescribed punishment for this. One who partakes of teruma while ritually impure is liable to receive death at the hand of heaven. Leviticus 22, verse 9. The Gemara answers, it cannot be referring to teruma because we do not find a sin whose punishment for an intentional violation is death, with regard to which one is liable to bring an offering for its unwitting violation. Sin offerings, of which the sliding scale offering is one type, are brought only for transgressions whose intentional violation is punishable by karet. The Gemara asks, but say that this statement applies only to a fixed sin offering, and that's the end of Daf 6.